Next time you're standing at a fish counter, actually look at it. Salmon, tuna, cod, shrimp, maybe tilapia if the store is feeling adventurous. That's it. That's basically the entire seafood menu most humans have ever known in their entire lives. Now here's a number that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Scientists have identified over 33,000 fish species living in the world's oceans, rivers, and lakes. Out of all of that, humans regularly eat a steady rotation of maybe 15 to 20 species. Do the math. That means well over 99% of everything swimming beneath the surface has never once touched a dinner plate. And for most of it, probably never will. You'd assume it's just about taste or maybe cost. It's not. The real answer is stranger, darker in places, and in some cases genuinely dangerous. Some of these fish can put you in a hospital. Some were eaten once, centuries ago, and then quietly banned forever. And some physically cannot survive the trip from the ocean floor to your kitchen. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the ocean works like a locked buffet, and what that reveals about how fragile our entire seafood system really is. Let's actually sit with that number for a second. 33,000 species. That is more than every species of mammal, bird, and reptile on Earth combined. The ocean isn't some quiet, mostly empty blue expanse the way it looks from a beach chair. It is by far the most biodiverse habitat that exists on this planet. And yet, when researchers study global seafood consumption patterns, the data shows something almost absurd. Roughly 10 species account for the overwhelming majority of everything humans eat worldwide. Salmon, tuna, cod, pollock, shrimp, tilapia, catfish, crab, herring, and anchovies. That's essentially the whole list repeated across almost every country on Earth. Everything else, every strange finned reef fish, every glowing bioluminescent deep-sea creature, every oddly shaped bottom dweller simply never makes it anywhere near a dinner table. Not because it doesn't exist, not because there isn't enough of it. It's because quietly, over thousands of years, the ocean has been filtering itself out of our diets in ways almost nobody stops to think about. So what exactly is going on here? Let's go through it, one reason at a time. Some fish are technically edible on paper, but eating them can genuinely put you in serious danger. There's a condition called ciguatera poisoning, and it has been quietly tormenting coastal communities for thousands of years. It works like this. Fish like barracuda, snapper, grouper, and amberjack feed on smaller reef fish, which in turn graze on certain naturally toxic algae growing on coral reefs. The toxin doesn't harm the fish carrying it. It just sits there, building up silently in the flesh, generation after generation, invisible and undetectable. Then a human eats it. And within hours, the body starts doing things that genuinely sound impossible. Fingertips and lips go numb. Muscles ache like you've run a marathon you never signed up for. Cold water suddenly feels scalding hot to the touch. A bizarre neurological reversal doctors still don't fully understand. Heart rhythm turns irregular. In severe cases, temporary paralysis sets in. Here's the part that makes it truly frightening. You cannot smell it. You cannot taste it. And heat does absolutely nothing to it. Cooking, grilling, frying, none of it neutralizes the toxin. There is no antidote. Global health estimates suggest tens of thousands of people are poisoned by ciguatera every single year. There's no international law banning these fish outright. It's something coastal communities learned the brutal way, one poisoning at a time, and simply passed down as an unspoken rule. Some reef fish you just don't touch. Not every danger in the ocean works instantly. Some take years to reveal themselves, quietly accumulating with every meal. This is called bioaccumulation, and it's one of the more unsettling facts about how ocean ecosystems work. Picture a tiny shrimp absorbing a microscopic trace of mercury from seawater. Mercury that ends up in the ocean partly through natural processes, partly through industrial pollution. A small fish eats a few hundred of those shrimp. A mid-sized fish eats a few hundred of those small fish. A large predator, say a shark, eats a few hundred of those mid-sized fish. At every single step up that chain, the mercury doesn't get diluted. It concentrates further. By the time you reach an apex predator sitting at the very top of the food web, its flesh can carry mercury levels dramatically, sometimes shockingly higher than the water it lives in. This single biological fact is exactly why health authorities across the world specifically warn people, especially pregnant women and young children, to avoid eating shark, swordfish, king mackerel, and tilefish regularly. It's not caution for the sake of caution. It's measurable, repeatable science. Shark meat in particular carries such high concentrations of mercury and urea that regular consumption can cause genuine long-term harm to the human nervous system. And here's the strange part. Ancient coastal communities with no concept of chemistry or toxicology still figured out to largely avoid eating large predatory fish. They didn't know why. They just knew through generations of trial and error that it wasn't worth the risk. Now for one of the strangest and most oddly specific cases in seafood history, the escaler. It's a sleek, deep water fish, often marketed under the misleading name white tuna or butterfish on restaurant menus. It looks clean. It tastes rich, buttery, almost luxurious. For a brief window in the early 2000s, it became genuinely trendy in American sushi restaurants. Then, the bans started rolling in. Japan banned its sale back in 1977. Italy followed in 2002. Several other countries have restricted it since. Why would anyone ban a fish that tastes this good? The answer is in its fat. Escaler's flesh is packed with a compound called wax esters, a type of fat the human digestive system has absolutely no enzyme to break down. Our bodies simply were never built to process it, so the body does the only thing it can. It tries to expel it, fast, and without much dignity involved. Within hours of eating escaler, most people experience sudden, oily, uncontrollable digestive discomfort. It's not toxic in the traditional sense. Nobody dies from it. But people who've experienced it describe it as one of the most physically humiliating meals of their life. In food circles, it's earned a blunt, unofficial nickname referencing a well-known laxative brand. And escaler isn't some rare exception. Dozens of deep-sea species carry fats and compounds that human digestion simply was never designed to handle. These animals evolved for an entirely different biological reality than the one our bodies operate in. Here's a fact that puts everything else in perspective. Roughly 95% of the ocean's total livable volume exists in the deep sea, below 200 meters. Down there, it's permanently pitch black. The water pressure at those depths would crush an unprotected human body in seconds. The temperature hovers just above freezing, all year, forever. This is the world of the blobfish, the fangtooth, the barrel-eye, the viperfish, creatures that look like they belong in a nightmare rather than an ocean. And here's what almost nobody tells you. It's not just difficult to reach these animals. Most of them are, quite literally, not built to be eaten. Deep-sea fish evolve soft, gelatinous, low-density bodies specifically to survive under crushing pressure. It's an elegant adaptation for life at extreme depth, but the moment one of these fish is hauled up to the surface, that pressure vanishes almost instantly. Their cells, no longer supported by the surrounding water pressure, begin to break down. The flesh turns soft, waterlogged, sometimes visibly decomposing within hours of being caught. Researchers and marine biologists who've actually attempted to eat deep-sea specimens describe the texture as something close to wet tissue paper. Mushy, flavorless, and structurally falling apart before it even reaches a plate. There is an entire hidden ecosystem living beneath us, teeming with life we barely understand, and almost none of it was ever meant to become food. So if the ocean genuinely holds 33,000 options, why did humanity converge on such a tiny handful? The honest answer isn't really about flavor, it's about pure survival economics. The species we built our entire food system around, salmon, tuna, cod, herring, all share a specific set of traits. They swim in massive dense schools near the surface, making them relatively easy to catch in large volumes. Their flesh is calorie dense and preserves well when salted, smoked, or dried, critical for communities without refrigeration. Here's what's genuinely fascinating. Ancient fishing communities scattered across completely different continents with zero contact with one another independently converged on nearly the same short list of species. Coastal Europeans, Pacific Islanders, and early Asian fishing cultures all landed on the same basic pattern, because those particular species were the ones that made the very real danger of going out to sea actually worth the risk. Old European accounts of the North Atlantic cod fishery describe the fish being so overwhelmingly abundant that sailors joked you could almost walk across the water on their backs. That fishery alone fed entire regions of Europe for centuries. Not because cod was the tastiest fish in the sea, plenty of chefs would argue it isn't even close, but because it was, by far, the most catchable. The same underlying logic repeated itself everywhere humans encountered the ocean. What ended up on your plate today isn't the ocean's best offering. It's the most economically rational subset a person with a hand-woven net could realistically pull from shallow water roughly 10,000 years ago. And remarkably, we never really sat down and revisited that decision. You'd think with modern refrigeration, global shipping, and advanced fishing technology, humanity would have expanded that original list by now. In some tiny ways, we have. But the core habit has barely shifted in 10,000 years, and there's a simple reason why. Once a supply chain, a fishing industry, industry, and a consumer palate all form around a handful of species. The entire system reinforces itself. Fishing fleets are built specifically to catch cod or tuna or shrimp. Processing plants are engineered around those exact species. Restaurants build menus around fish people already recognize. Nobody wants to be the first supermarket selling barrel-life fillets next to the salmon. Culturally, humans are also remarkably resistant to trying unfamiliar seafood, even when it's perfectly safe and nutritious. Species like lionfish, an invasive predator wrecking reef ecosystems across the Atlantic and Caribbean, are actually completely safe and quite tasty once the venomous spines are removed. Conservationists have spent years actively encouraging people to eat more lionfish specifically to help control its population. Yet most consumers still walk right past it toward the same 10 familiar names. It's a strange kind of inertia, an entire global food system quietly running on a decision made by fishing communities thousands of years before refrigeration, before shipping containers, before any of us were born. And here's where the story turns genuinely serious. The same 20 species humanity settled on thousands of years ago are now, in the present day, the ones being pushed toward total collapse. North Atlantic cod crashed so severely in the early 1990s that Canada was forced to shut down an entire fishery that had fed Europe continuously for roughly 500 years. Communities that had fished the same waters for generations lost their entire way of life almost overnight. Atlantic bluefin tuna populations dropped sharply under decades of industrial fishing pressure, prized heavily by international sushi markets. Wild Pacific salmon runs across multiple river systems currently sit at some of the lowest levels ever recorded. Meanwhile, nearly 33,000 other species remain almost completely untouched. Many of them are abundant. Many are genuinely nutritious. Many are sitting quietly beneath the surface in ecosystems barely disturbed by human activity, while we continue draining the exact same handful of species toward extinction. It's not that the ocean has run out of options for us. It's that we've never seriously reconsidered the list, even as the consequences of that narrow choice become harder and harder to ignore. We built our entire seafood system roughly 10,000 years ago, based purely on what a person with a simple handmade net could realistically drag out of shallow coastal water. And somehow, across 10,000 years of human progress, through empires, industrial revolutions, refrigeration, satellite navigation, and global shipping, we never really went back and updated that original list. It's not that the ocean ran out of options. It's that we stopped asking what else was down there. Right now, in cold, permanently dark water, in places barely explored by human eyes, in schools of millions that no person has ever witnessed, the vast majority of the ocean's life is still there, waiting, completely indifferent to whether we ever come looking. The only real question left is whether we figure it out in time, before the 20 species we did choose disappear entirely. If this video changed how you think about your dinner plate, subscribe, because the ocean has a lot more secrets exactly like this one still waiting beneath the surface.